What's up, everybody? So I'm here to talk about how to stay afloat when the world is going to hell in a handbasket, economically speaking, here in 2022. So real estate investing is about to get really crazy. It actually already is, and it's going to be gnarly to participate in. Not going to pull any punches. People have been talking about rampant inflation and a cataclysmic housing crash for like a lot of years. If you watch any of Robert Kiyosaki's videos, he's been calling this for like 10 years now. And it looks like it's all crescendoing right now at this moment in the end of 22. So now that it's here, the best question really is, what are we to do about it? So we know the facts, and more specifically, if you've been getting ready to invest in real estate, should you still go for it? Because I know that can be a little disheartening if you've been waiting for your opportunity and now interest rates keep going up and going up and going up. So the truth is, if you're smart about it, real estate investing is still a great idea. Remember, never stop buying cash flowing properties, even in a crazy end to 2022 and into 2023. So today we'll cover the bases so that you can come out on top even if you are just now getting into the market. So here are my 5 keys for real estate investing in a crappy market here at the end of 2022 and into 2023. So step number 1, make sure your head is screwed on straight. I've personally been investing for about 6 years, and I've been representing investors for over a decade now. And the reality is I can't approach things the same way that I did a decade ago. Back then you could move pretty slowly, to be honest, because there was a lot of deals available, possibly too slow actually, to my detriment at sometimes, because it usually worked out because it was a big tailwind behind us in the real estate industry. But a lot of times I would search and hold out for like great deals, even when there was capital available. So I let some fish off the hook because I was just too slow to reel them in. However, real estate investing in 2022 and 2023 is a little different. This year, if you're hoping to find the perfect deal and make out like a bandit, you might want to rethink your goals. Now, there's still going to be deals, mind you, but they won't be like a steal. Everyone's going to be hurting this year and into next year, and they're going to try to squeeze the most out of their home sales, which actually can work to your advantage. So especially considering those properties that go down in value and you add in a little bit of fear, I'm going to talk about how you can execute and take advantage of what the market's going to give you. I also, in this moment, wouldn't count on a lot of price appreciation. If anything, I would anticipate prices to continue to go down a little bit. So unless you're doing what I do, which is buying properties at a steep discount and then building appreciation through massive, well thought out renovations, don't bet on appreciation to bail you out. So with all that said, I'm still extremely optimistic because when we invest, we should be thinking in terms of decades. You're not thinking about months. You're not even thinking about a year or two. Smart investors think in terms of decades. And if you could take a long-term approach, you can weather any short-natured storm. Even when we approach a short-term strategy like my flipping 10 houses during a recession, I'm only doing this to stack up cash so that we can transition those funds into long-term holdings, into those decade thinking type investments. So we know that after every correction, there comes opportunity season, and that's when we make out like bandits. And real estate markets go up over time, and they will continue to always go up over time so long as people need a place to live. Food, water, shelter. It's a basic necessity of life. Number 2, be prepared to be opportunistic. Now, hope this isn't too tactical or too predatorial for a lot of people, but the reality is in some markets there are winners and there are losers. And I've said this before and it bears repeating, no one knows when the bottom of the housing market is going to occur. And if you're planning on real estate investing in 2023, don't try to time your jump. Just be prepared to be opportunistic. We want you to be prepared for the best, but more prepared for the worst. So what that means is make sure you have an emergency fund. Make sure that you have liquid assets in as much as you can. Keep your credit rating and your credit report in really good order so that banks like you. And most importantly, have your funds ready to strike when the opportunity presents itself, whether it's hard money, private money, bank money, private cash, your own cash. It essentially means you're fully prepared to pull the trigger. Not hypothetically, not conceptually, but standing at the ready to execute the moment the right deal comes across your desk. Also know this, since you don't know when the market will bottom out, things very well could continue to get worse while you're looking, or could get worse even after you buy it. And that's okay, because remember, it's temporary. Investors, smart investors, think in terms of decades. We're playing the long game, and so we play over long periods of time. You know, it's funny, I think back, like over the years, I've heard a lot of people talk about, I wish I could go back to 2009 and start investing. But the reality is, no, you don't, because most people don't have the stomach to actually invest when the market is ripe with deals. In 2009, the market had just crashed. Now, yes, there's there's been an incredible, unprecedented run up since 2009. But if you had just lived through it and you had a bunch of cash stacked up and all the news was just talking about how horrible the real estate crash just was, most people were not going to pull the trigger. It's very similar now. All you hear is the fear mongering on the news, how interest rates are going through the roof, how a recession is coming. That's why it's so ironic that people in hindsight always wish they could go back to the moment where the opportunities were biggest. But the reality is most people don't have the intestinal fortitude to pull the trigger when those opportunities present themselves, because you gotta be confident, you gotta know what you're doing, and you gotta not listen to the noise. Step 3, know that everyone else starts out optimistic. So here's where it gets a little predatory. Different people's optimism will drop at different points. This is good for us that are really paying attention and those of us that are being opportunistic. So in my time studying people, I've noticed that most people start out optimistic that they can get a really good sales price, and then they drop their expectation a tiny bit and they drop it a little more, and shortly thereafter that expectation typically drops off of a cliff. As an investor, we're looking to chase those people whose expectations just fell off the cliff. So there's one catch though, and you gotta be aware that there's other investors that think opportunistically like this as well. So you're not the only one waiting for optimism to drop through the floor. And if someone lists a property that's attractive, there's still gonna be other savvy investors waiting for this opportunity. So while we wait for mass loss of optimism, we have to be aware that our competitors are as well. And it's already starting to happen. If you turn on the news, turn on CNBC or Fox Business, the fear mongering is like in full force right now. It's palpable. And that spells opportunity for the savvy investors that's thinking over decades. So quick story, quick anecdote. Just this past week, I put an offer in on a duplex. Now, granted, it needs like a crazy renovation top to bottom, including like ripping out all the subfloor, new joists and piers and stuff underneath. But the seller listed it for less than half of what its intrinsic value was, let's say at the market peak. So I was pounding down doors to get that deal done. A bidding war ensued, and I was the only cash buyer. And even though the seller had like multiple other offers that were higher, he believed, and probably rightly so, that I was the only buyer that could actually get it done. I waived contingencies, I waived bank appraisal, I did my own due diligence, but he wasn't worried that I could use a contingency to get out of the sale. I was just simply gonna purchase it with cash and do my own due diligence for my own knowledge sake. So he knew that I was the best buyer because I was able to execute, remove contingencies, act confidently, even though he had other offers that could potentially offer him more net. So this brings me to step 4 of how to kick ass when everybody else is scared, or whatever the heck this video is titled. Shop carefully, but move quickly. Like I said before, finding deals is not as easy as it used to be a decade ago, but with the change in interest rates and losses in optimism, deals are already starting to come back. So right now, I'm on the hunt for deals that are listed at 75%, maybe 80% or so below the peak of the market. In my opinion, the peak of the market was spring of 2022, not too long ago. So anything that's 75% or below of that peak is a deal to me, and I'm gonna look really closely at it, assuming it doesn't need a massive overhaul. I'll have to drop that percentage the more work the property would actually need. So step 5 and the last clue here is buy a house with stable numbers, or just make sure your criteria is really locked in. So I'm gonna warn you right now, when you eventually buy your property, your next property, maybe your first property, something will feel like it went wrong, particularly if you're a newbie. Most likely you're gonna miss the bottom of the market, and then you're gonna see everyone around you getting maybe a slightly better deal or telling you that they're getting a better deal. This is really tough, especially if you're a newbie, because the FOMO is so real on your first deal and on your first couple of deals. To this day, dude, I still wonder if I miss on a deal. I always still have that weird little hesitancy, like, oh my God, did I overpay or did I miss on this mark? It's okay. Stick to your plan, stick to your criteria, make sure that your deal can pass the muster in terms of worst case scenarios. So my quick worst case scenario definition for this market right now is assume interest rates could go up by a point or so while you're under contract. If the property management fees go up to 10%, so normally I underwrite at like 6 or 7% because my current, actually we manage in-house, but if I were to hire a property manager, I underwrite at 10%. And thirdly, can I sustain the property if there's no tenant or no income for 6 months? If after taking all of that into consideration, my rent income is still higher than my expenses, I know that I'll be okay because I'm playing the long game. So a couple of final thoughts. I'm not a betting man, except when I go to Atlantic City, but that's different. That's more like entertainment, right? I don't like to bet bet in the real estate market or with real investing dollars, but sometimes it's fun to take a shot. So let's ask the question, what do we think will indicate a true market bottom? Because that's a good question to ask. One primary indicator for me is that the housing market essentially will bottom out when it is virtually impossible to have positive cash flow. And that will happen at some point as the Fed continues to raise interest rates ad infinitum. They already telegraphed they're going to keep raising them. So when by and large the deals are impossible to make work from a numbers perspective, we're close to a bottom. So that begs the question, when will the bottom of the housing market happen? As I've said before, nobody has a crystal ball, and I'm not a betting man, but if I had to guess, my thoughts would be this. The true bottom will occur within a few months of the last interest rate hike in this economic cycle. Because at that point, confidence has to begin to resume, because normal people and residential buyers and investors alike will know that the sunrise, so to speak, is on the horizon, and the Fed in turn, really the Fed and what they lend to the banks is going to come trickle down to us, and it's going to get easier to start purchasing again because rates will begin to decrease and prices will start to rise again. So I think that when that happens, we'll know we're at the bottom. So the people that are going to sweat the most on the way to the bottom and at the bottom are going to be the people who speculated, the people who bet. This is why I don't like to bet, because this game is too serious. The stakes are really high. So the speculators and the bettors, the people who bought too many properties, speculating on prices just to continue to go up, people that bet with low or inadequate reserves, people that got into cash flow deals where it's negative cash flow or even cash flow, people that bought a lot of property on interest rate, variable interest rate debt and hoping for the best, those people are probably going to get crushed. And it's going to look something like this. They'll list and then they'll try to get rid of their problem by selling it, because at this point it's an albatross around their neck because their interest rate's gone through the roof. And then they'll drop their price a month later, and then they'll drop it again. And by like the second or third or fourth price drop, they're going to panic. And shortly after, they're really going to panic. And that's when you and I need to be there to make a deal happen. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please click the like, click the subscribe, click the bell notification too. I'd really like to get that feedback so I know that you're enjoying the stuff that we're doing. If you have a question, please comment below and I'll be sure to hit you back. Until next time, I'm Jonathan Beasley signing off.